She inspired art, toppled kings, and broke every rule a woman could in her time. Yet beneath the gold and legend, Cleopatra VII was flesh and blood, a queen, a lover, a mother, a survivor. What secrets did she keep? What did she fear? Tonight, on Echoes Through Time, young Leo journeys to Alexandria's palace to meet the real Cleopatra, raw, insightful, and unguarded. Stay with us for a conversation that challenges every myth and brings a legend to life. Alexandria, 34 BC. Lanterns flicker in the palace gardens, their light shimmering over marble fountains and peacock feathers. The air is thick with jasmine, and the city's din drifts through open colonnades. In a quiet alcove, Cleopatra, barefoot, hair unbraided, eyes lost in thought, waits for a stranger who claims to travel through time. Tonight, masks fall.
Whoa, sorry. Am I late? I got lost between a room full of papyrus scrolls and a guy who offered me a monkey. Seriously, is this, okay? Should I have brought a gift?
A monkey? That's a new one. You're right on time, Leo. Sit with me. Here, beneath the citron trees. Gifts are not required. Only honesty.
You, don't look like I expected. I mean, I thought queens always wore, gold crowns and eyeliner so sharp it could cut marble.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I just want to feel the grass under my feet. I wore a crown at 14 and it never quite fit. Still doesn't. But tonight you get the woman, not the statue. I have worn more masks than most actors, Leo. The world expects a goddess, a temptress, a tyrant, but I am, above all, a survivor.
Deal. So, what's the very first thing you remember about being a queen? Was it like confetti, parades, awesome feasts?
The first thing I remember is the overwhelming silence after the crowds left. I became queen at 18 after my father's death. My brother Ptolemy III, just a child, sat beside me on the throne. The celebration, if you can call it that, was a performance for the city. Inside, I felt a cold dread. The court was full of whispered schemes, and every gesture was observed and judged. That night, I walked alone through the palace, listening to the echo of my own footsteps. I understood in that moment that being queen meant being utterly alone, even in the midst of people. There were no confetti, no carefree feasts. My first royal decree was to restore bread to the temples, which my father had neglected. I wanted to show my people that I would not simply continue old mistakes. Every choice, even the smallest, was a test. Would I be Pharaoh in truth, or just a figurehead manipulated by others?
Did you always want to be queen? Or was it something forced on you because of your family?
In my childhood, I was fascinated by stories of Alexander and the early Ptolemies. I longed to do something exceptional, to be more than just another royal daughter married off for politics. Yet I was not the eldest, nor the favored. My father's court was a tangle of alliances and jealousies. I was given the best education, Greek rhetoric, Egyptian language, mathematics, philosophy, medicine. I loved learning. My earliest dreams were to become a scholar, perhaps even to teach in the museum. But destiny has little patience for the dreams of princesses. As I grew, I realized that if I did not seize power, it would be seized by someone else, someone with less mercy and less imagination. so I made myself indispensable. I learned the language of the priests, the customs of the people, the games of politics. I did not simply inherit the throne, I fought for it, even before I wore the crown.
How did you actually learn all those languages? I can barely manage two.
I was fortunate to have brilliant tutors: Greeks, Egyptians, Hebrews, Persians. To them, language was not just words, but power. My Greek was formal, my Egyptian colloquial. I learned to speak to the priests in their own tongue, to address merchants in theirs. I could negotiate with Syrians, debate with Jews, charm Parthian envoys. Plutarch, I suspect, exaggerated when he counted 9 languages, but I truly relished learning them. It was a necessity. My dynasty had ruled as foreigners for centuries. By addressing my people as one of them, not as a distant Hellenic queen, I won trust and loyalty. It was also, frankly, a delight. Each tongue reveals a different way of seeing the world.
What was your favorite language to speak?
They all have their music. Egyptian is beautiful for poetry. Its words are soft and flowing, like the river itself. Greek is sharp and precise, suited for debate and philosophy. I sometimes think I could have been a poet if fate had allowed it. Even now, I sometimes recite Sappho before sleep, or the old hymns to Isis.
What was Alexandria like at its peak? I've read about the lighthouse in the library, but I can't picture it.
Alexandria is a city of wonders. At sunset, the white marble glows with rose and gold. The streets are crowded with philosophers, sailors, traders from all corners of the world. Greeks, Egyptians, Jews, Syrians, even Indians and Nubians. The lighthouse, taller than any building you have ever seen, guides ships from the farthest horizons. The library, before the fire, housed hundreds of thousands of scrolls, the collected wisdom of centuries. Scholars debated under colonnades, and poets recited in gardens. There are spice markets, perfumeries, bakeries with honeyed cakes, and music everywhere. It is a city of light and knowledge, and also of intrigue and danger. In Alexandria, one can find anything, but nothing comes without a price.
Did you ever sneak out into the city? Or were you stuck in the palace?
I did, more than once, disguised, of course. I wanted to see how ordinary people lived, what they thought of their queen. Once, during a festival, I joined a crowd at a puppet show. Another time, I visited the fish market and bought a basket of eels. The city is both my kingdom and my teacher.
Can you tell me about the library fire? Was it as terrible as people say?
It was devastating. During the Alexandrian War, when Caesar's troops set fire to the dockyards to block my brother's fleet, the flames spread further than anyone intended. The library was close by. I stood on the palace balcony and watched as smoke rose above the city. I knew what was lost: works of science, plays, histories, medical treatises, and poetry that existed nowhere else. It was not only a blow to Egypt, it was a wound to the world's memory. I tried in later years to restore what I could, sending for copies from Athens, Pergamon, even Babylon. But some things are gone forever. Sometimes I wonder if that act alone is punishment enough for all the follies of kings and generals.
Did you ever get to read any of the lost scrolls yourself? Any you especially miss?
Yes, many. I remember a treatise by Hypatia's grandfather on astronomy, a rare play by Euripides, and a scroll from India on herbal medicine. Each scroll was a world. I miss them as one misses old friends. I tried to memorize as much as I could, but knowledge lost is rarely regained.
After your father died, what was the hardest part about sharing the throne with your brother?
The hardest part was knowing that I could not trust anyone, not even my own blood. Ptolemy was only 10, easily manipulated by his advisors. The court became a battlefield of whispers and bribes. Every decree, every meeting, was a power struggle. I tried to guide him, but the men around him, Pothinos, Theodotus, saw me as a threat to their own ambitions. Eventually, they forced me into exile. I remember the night I fled Alexandria. The city was silent, and I left with only a few loyal friends and what gold I could carry. It was humiliating and frightening, but also clarifying. In exile, I learned who my true friends were, and I learned what I was willing to risk for my throne. I raised an army in Syria, not because I relished war, but because I knew Egypt deserved better than to be torn apart by greedy men.
Did you ever feel guilty about what happened to your siblings?
Guilt is the shadow of every ruler. I loved my sister Arsinoe as a child. We played together in the palace. But as adults, she became a threat, aligning with my enemies and plotting against me. I ordered her death, knowing it was necessary, but it haunts my dreams. My brothers, one drowned fleeing battle, the other poisoned. In this world, power demands sacrifice. I mourn them, but I do not regret protecting Egypt. Sometimes, to save a kingdom, the heart must be hardened.
What was it really like meeting Julius Caesar for the first time? Was it as dramatic as the stories say?
In some ways, it was even more dramatic. I knew my only chance lay in surprising him, bypassing the courtiers who opposed me. The plan to be smuggled in a rug, or more accurately a sack of linen, was risky. I was terrified, but also exhilarated. When I was unwrapped before Caesar, he did not react with anger or shock, but with amusement and curiosity. He listened as I pleaded my case. I spoke to him not as a supplicant, but as a fellow ruler. He respected that. Caesar was a man used to command, but he admired boldness in others. That night, we spoke for hours about Egypt, Rome, philosophy, the burdens of power. It was the beginning of a complex partnership, political certainly, but also intellectual, and in time, personal.
How did you manage your relationship with Caesar given the danger and the gossip?
Very carefully. Rome is a nest of vipers, and Caesar's favor made me a target. I made allies where I could, charmed some, outmaneuvered others. I tried to show the Romans that Egypt could be a friend, not a rival. But many saw me as a threat, and the rumors grew. I learned to use gossip to my advantage, sometimes letting them believe what frightened them most, sometimes correcting the record with a well-timed appearance or speech. Caesar was pragmatic. He valued what I could offer. For my part, I saw in him a partner who could secure my throne, and for a time, perhaps, something like love.
Did you ever think about marrying him? Or moving to Rome forever?
The thought crossed both our minds, I think. But Roman law forbids marriage to foreigners, and Caesar had a wife. Rome was not ready for a foreign queen, nor for a queen at all. I visited Rome, lived in his villa, but always as an outsider. After his assassination, I knew I could never truly belong there. My destiny was tied to Egypt.
You said earlier you wanted to be a healer or a scholar. Did you get to pursue those interests as queen?
To some extent, yes. When I was able, I held salons for philosophers and scientists, debated with mathematicians, and sponsored research in medicine and astronomy. I wrote treatises on cosmetics and healing, blending Greek and Egyptian knowledge. I spent hours with the library's physicians, experimenting with herbal remedies. I even developed perfumes. My favorite was a blend of lotus and myrrh, which I wore during religious festivals. Yet, much of my time was consumed by politics, warfare, and administration. I regret not having more time for pure scholarship, but I wove learning into my rule wherever I could.
What was your daily routine as queen? Did you ever get a day off?
Rarely. My days began with reports from the provinces, grain yields, tax collections, news of unrest. I met with advisors, judged petitions, presided over ceremonies. Sometimes I would receive foreign ambassadors or conduct religious rituals. In the evenings, I might dine with scholars or musicians, or discuss statecraft with my trusted friends. Occasionally, I escaped to the gardens to walk alone or read poetry. But a true holiday, that is a luxury for other lives.
How did you manage Egypt's economy and administration? It sounds exhausting.
It was, but it was essential. Egypt's bureaucracy was ancient and often corrupt. The tax collectors could be ruthless, and the people suffered during years of poor Nile flooding. I tried to reform what I could, reducing some taxes, forgiving debts, and ordering grain from the royal granaries distributed during famine. I kept close watch on the treasury and insisted on detailed reports from every region. I corresponded directly with provincial governors and sometimes traveled incognito to inspect conditions myself. I also promoted trade. Egypt exported grain, papyrus, glass, perfumes, and imported luxury goods from India and Africa. Our position as the breadbasket of the Mediterranean gave me leverage in dealing with Rome, but it also made Egypt a target for those who coveted our wealth.
What was your proudest accomplishment as ruler?
That is a difficult question. Perhaps preserving Egypt's independence for as long as I did, against overwhelming odds. Or perhaps the times I showed mercy, granting amnesty, forgiving debts, feeding the hungry in years of famine. I am also proud of my children and of the cultural renaissance I tried to foster in Alexandria. In the end, survival itself was a kind of triumph.
What was your relationship like with the Egyptian people? Did they see you as truly Egyptian?
I tried very hard to present myself as a true pharaoh, not just a Greek queen. I learned Egyptian, participated in religious rituals, and had myself depicted in the traditional double crown on temple walls. I revived old festivals, restored temples, and honored the gods in both Greek and Egyptian ways. Many Egyptians welcomed this. They brought offerings, sang hymns to me as Nea Isis. But there was always a tension. 3 centuries of Ptolemaic rule could not be erased in a generation. Some saw me as a bridge between worlds, others as the last foreigner to sit on the throne. I did my best to win their trust through deeds, not just words.
After Caesar, you allied with Mark Antony. What drew you to him, and how was he different from Caesar?
Antony was utterly unlike Caesar. He was warm, impulsive, larger than life. He loved spectacle, feasts, laughter, and was comfortable showing emotion, something Caesar seldom did. Our first meeting in Tarsus was pure theater. I sailed up the river as Aphrodite, and he responded as Dionysus. But beneath that, he was a skilled general and a shrewd, if sometimes reckless, politician. With Antony, I could share burdens and joys in equal measure. He recognized my authority, not just as a consort, but as an equal sovereign. Our partnership was both strategic and deeply personal. He needed Egypt's wealth for his campaigns. I needed his military support to secure my throne and defend against Rome's growing aggression. Our children, twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, and later Ptolemy Philadelphus, were symbols of our hope for a new dynasty. Our love was genuine, but always shadowed by politics and war.
Did you ever just want to run away with him and forget about ruling?
We dreamed of it, sometimes after a night of music and wine. Antony would joke about living as a fisherman, and I imagined a quiet life as a scholar or healer. But duty always called us back. The fate of millions rested on our decisions. We could not abandon them for our own desires.
What was the Donations of Alexandria ceremony really about? Why give away so many titles and lands?
The Donations of Alexandria were both a declaration of ambition and a challenge to Rome. Antony and I wanted to establish a new order in the East, a federation of Hellenistic kingdoms united under our children. We distributed royal titles and territories to our sons and daughter, parading them before the people of Alexandria. Caesarion was proclaimed King of Kings. My twins were given Armenia, Media, and Libya, and little Philadelphus received Syria and Cilicia. It was a spectacle: golden thrones, costumes, lavish processions. The ceremony declared that Rome was not the only power in the world. The East had its own destiny. Of course, to the Romans, it was an outrage. Octavian used it to fuel propaganda that Antony had become a traitor, bewitched by an Eastern queen. In truth, it was our attempt to build a counterweight to Rome and secure our children's future, a hope that would not survive the coming war.
Did you have any regrets about raising your children in such a dangerous world?
Many regrets, Leo. I wanted them to inherit a world at peace, but instead they inherited uncertainty and fear. Still, I taught them to be curious, to love knowledge, and to show compassion. I hope those lessons endured, even if my dreams for their reign did not.
Let's talk about Actium. What was it like leading your fleet in battle?
Actium was chaos and heartbreak. I commanded 60 ships, personally outfitted and crewed. We faced Agrippa, Octavian's admiral, who was brilliant and merciless. The battle was a test of nerves as much as strength. Smoke, fire, the clash of oars, the screams of men and gulls. When it became clear that Antony's forces were being outmaneuvered and that we risked capture or death, I made the decision to withdraw my squadron. It was not cowardice, but a calculated risk. If I was captured, Egypt would fall, and my children would be lost. Antony followed me, abandoning the battle. The defeat shattered our hopes, and I knew that Rome's vengeance would be swift. In the aftermath, Antony fell into despair, and I was left to prepare for the end, fortifying Alexandria, securing my children, and ultimately building my own tomb.
How did the Egyptian people react after Actium?
There was fear and sadness, but also loyalty. Many still saw me as their last protector. I tried to reassure them, rebuilding defenses, distributing food, and keeping order as best I could. Some fled or surrendered to the Romans, but others stayed by my side until the very end. Their courage gave me strength in my darkest hours.
How did you spend your last days as queen? What were your fears and hopes?
Those were the darkest days of my life. I tried to negotiate with Octavian, offering to abdicate in favor of my children or to become a vassal queen. He was implacable. I sent Caesarion away, hoping to save him, but in my heart, I knew the Romans would never let him live. I spent hours with my children, teaching them stories, comforting them, trying to prepare them for a world without me. I met with priests to arrange my burial, beside Antony, as befits lovers and rulers. I tested poisons. I wanted a quick and dignified death, not the humiliation of being paraded in Rome. In those days, I grieved for Egypt's lost independence, for my children's uncertain fate, and for the centuries of culture and knowledge that would be swept away. My only hope was that my story might be remembered, that I had tried, against all odds, to preserve something of what made Egypt unique.
There are so many rumors about your death. Was it really the asp?
The asp is a powerful symbol in Egypt, royal, sacred, fatal. The real story is more complex. I had studied poisons for years, some quick, some gentle. I wanted control over my own end, not to be a trophy for Octavian. The asp, whether real or not, became a fitting emblem. My loyal servants, Charmian and Iras, died with me. I left Octavian a letter, asking to be buried with Antony. I chose my death, as I had chosen my life, on my own terms, with as much dignity as fate allowed.
Do you think about your legacy? How do you want to be remembered?
All the time. I pray they remember me not merely as a seductress or a pawn of powerful men. I was a ruler, a scholar, a mother. I fought to preserve my kingdom's independence in a world dominated by men and by empire. I used every tool at my disposal: intellect, diplomacy, language, spectacle. I made mistakes, sometimes terrible ones. But I never stopped striving for what I believed was best for Egypt and for my children. I hope people remember me as a woman who dared to rule, who loved knowledge, who cherished her people, and who faced her end with courage.
What's the biggest misconception about you, do you think?
That my power lay only in beauty or seduction. In truth, my mind was my greatest weapon. I outmaneuvered rivals, negotiated with kings, and governed a complex land through intellect, not just charm. The Romans found it easier to call me a temptress than to admit a woman could outthink them.
What would you say to a young woman today who wants to lead?
Learn everything you can. Trust your own judgment. Do not shrink from ambition, but temper it with compassion. Know that the world will judge you harshly, sometimes for daring, sometimes for caring. Endure. Shape your own fate whenever possible. And remember, every day, that you are enough.
If you could go back and change one thing, what would it be?
Perhaps I would have acted sooner to protect the library, or been more ruthless with enemies early on. But regret is a luxury. Every choice I made was shaped by the pressures and dangers of my time. I did the best I could, with the knowledge I had.
What do you think happened to your children? Do you hope their stories continued?
I hope so. I pray my daughter Selene lived and ruled with wisdom, and that my sons found peace. I fear for Caesarion. He bore the hopes of two worlds. But if even one of my children found happiness, or helped another, my life was not in vain.
You've been called a goddess, a villain, a genius, a victim. Which word fits best?
Each is a mask others have placed on me. In truth, I am simply Cleopatra, a woman of my time, shaped by powers beyond any one person's control. I wore many faces, but always sought to choose my own destiny. That, perhaps, is the only title I claim.
If you could give one piece of advice to future generations, what would it be?
Learn, always. Question, always. Do not let others define your worth by your gender, your birth, your beauty, or your failures. And remember that power is fleeting, but wisdom and kindness endure long after empires fall.
If you could see the future, what would you want to know?
Does Egypt survive? Does anyone remember the library? Do women rule in their own right? But perhaps it is better not to know. The future belongs to the daring, and I have dared enough for one life.
I came to meet a legend. What I found was a woman full of doubts and dreams, wisdom and scars. Cleopatra changed how I see history, and maybe how I see myself. Sometimes the bravest thing is just to be real, even when everyone expects a myth.
In the moonlit gardens of Alexandria, the last pharaoh's laughter lingers. She was not only a conqueror or a queen, but a seeker of wisdom, of love, of meaning. Let us remember, every legend is built from secret joys and hidden heartbreaks. Until our next journey, keep listening for the echoes, the human ones, through time.